Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another episode of Spike Sunday, a weekly series where we take a look at established standard or modern decks, and this week we're taking a look at red-white or Boros Burn in modern, a deck that's ideally going to deal some early damage with creatures and then finish off the opponent with a flurry of burn spells. So let's dive right into it here, starting out with our 1-mana red creatures. We've got 4 copies of Goblin Guide, a 1-mana 2/2 creature with haste, and when the Goblin Guide attacks, the opponent gets to reveal the top card of their library, and if it's a land card, they get to put it into their hand. So that's the drawback of having a 1-mana 2/2 with haste, which otherwise can deal a lot of early damage. We also have 4 copies of Monastery Swiftspear, a 1-mana 1/2 with haste and prowess, so whenever we cast a non-creature spell, the Monastery Swiftspear gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and of course combine that with all our burn spells, we can make our Swiftspear pretty big to get in for a lot of early damage. And then we also have 1 copy of Grim Lavamancer, a 1-mana 1/1, where we can tap the Grim Lavamancer, pay red mana and exile 2 cards from our graveyard to deal 2 damage to any target, so shines against small creature decks. Then we get to our burn spells, where we have 4 copies of Lava Spike to deal 3 damage at sorcery speed to an opponent. Then of course 4 copies of Lightning Bolt, which can deal 3 damage at instant speed to any target. And then an honorary 1-mana burn spell is Rift Bolt, which we can suspend for 1 red mana, and then on our following upkeep we will get to deal 3 damage to any target. Then we get to our 2-drops, where we have 4 copies of Eidolon of the Great Revel, a 2-mana 2/2 enchantment creature that says whenever a player casts a spell with convert mana cost 3 or less, Eidolon deals 2 damage to that player. And of course the idea being that the burn deck is going to be able to output damage faster than any other deck, so the damage we take from Eidolon is negligible compared to the damage the opponent is taking. And of course a 2-mana 2/2 can also attack and block. Then we get to our 2-mana burn spells, where we have 4 copies of Skullcrack, which deals 3 damage to the opponent, and also says players can't gain life this turn, so great against opposing life gain spells, and damage also can be prevented this turn, which is also relevant with creatures that have protection from a certain color. Then we have 4 copies of Searing Blaze, which shines against creature decks, being able to deal 3 damage to target player and 3 damage to target creature that player controls if we enabled landfall, so if just a land entered the battlefield under our control this turn, which is pretty easy to accomplish, especially with fetch lands as well. Then we have 4 copies of Boros Charm, which has 3 different modes, but more often than not we're just going to deal 4 damage to the opponent. And last but not least, we have 4 copies of Lightning Helix, which deals 3 damage to any target, and we also get to gain 3 life. And then the mana base, we have an assortment of fetch lands, 4 copies of Arid Mesa, 4 copies of Wooded Foothills, and 1 copy of Bloodstained Mire, just because these were the cheapest red fetch lands on Magic Online, but you can add some other fetch lands as well if you want to diversify your fetch lands in case of Pithing Needle. And our fetch lands can get 3 basic mountains, 2 Sacred Foundries, and 1 Stomping Ground for our sideboard cards. And we also have 4 copies of Inspiring Vantage, which enters the battlefield untapped if it's one of our first 3 lands. Then taking a look at our sideboard, we have 2 copies of Path to Exile to deal with larger creatures, 2 Searing Bloods against smaller creatures, 2 Rest in Peace against graveyard decks, 2 copies of Kor Firewalker for the mirror match, 1 Deflecting Palm against large creatures, 4 Destructive Revelry to deal with artifacts or enchantments, and 2 Exquisite Firecraft, mostly for the control decks, where we get to deal 4 damage and not have it countered. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the play, and this hand is missing a second land, is also missing 1-mana plays, so this hand is gonna risk not drawing a second land and then just being way too slow, since we're gonna be unable to empty our hand quickly enough. So I think this is a mulligan, sadly. Usually you have the opposite problem, where you have too many lands, but sometimes 1 land and all 2-mana spells is not good enough. This one I'll keep, and I don't think we want a Bloodstained Mire. Grim Lavamancer is not the ideal 1-drop. We also don't have any fetch lands to fuel him, but still better than not having a 1-mana play. Turn on Concealed Courtyard into Legion's Landing. Alright, some sort of tokens deck. So the Searing Blaze is going to be decent. And we get to get in for 1. If this were a Monastery Swiftspear, it would have dealt 3 damage already. If this were a Goblin Guide, it would have dealt 4 damage already. So here we have to ask ourselves if we want to attack for 1, or if we want to use a Lavamancer to deal 2 damage to something. think I'm leaning towards dealing 2 damage to something, especially if we draw lands next turn. We can both use Lavamancer this turn and next turn, which seems worth it. So I'm just gonna say go, sit on our instance. So let's Helix the opponent. And their opponent didn't try to kill our Lavamancer at any point here, so it's unlikely that they're gonna kill him right now. And so now we get the chance to burn our opponent. So we don't need to draw very many more burn spells here to win the game. So let's say go again. Opponent's gonna fetch with Marsh Flats for basic plains. So we could burn our opponent for 8 right now, or we could let him untap and risk losing Lavamancer, but I don't want him to activate Shambling Vent and attack. So I want to keep our Bolt or Helix for that, and a start from start to finish, that's fine. Makes 2 tokens. So had we attacked with Lavamancer, that would have gone poorly. And finish on the Lavamancer, so now it's time to unload some burn spells and then hope to top deck a burn spell next turn to finish off our opponent, since we get to put them to 2 life here. So this is usually where the burn deck ends up, just needing to top deck any burn spell to win the game. If our opponent gets to untap and connect with Shambling Vent, then things could go poorly. And there's a Searing Blaze, which is unfortunately not good enough here. So we can put our opponent to 1. But if they somehow crack a fetch land, then we can potentially kill them. Or if they decide to Field of Ruin us. But that seems unlikely, and yep, there we see the Shambling Vent activation. So our opponent can go to 4 here. Don't really see a reason to fire off the Searing Blaze right now on the warrior token, since if we draw any 2-mana burn spell we still win. I guess Rift Bolt is a reason to fire off the Searing Blaze now, since if we were to draw Rift Bolt, then we won't have the mana to both Searing Blaze and Rift Bolt. So this is a pretty difficult decision, since if we draw a fetch land, for example, then we could still Searing Blaze the Shambling Vent next turn. We only have 4 Rift Bolts in the deck, so I think we let damage happen here, since there's a chance we can still get better use out of the Searing Blaze. But we're gonna regret this if we top deck a Rift Bolt. So now we can Searing Blaze the warrior token, put our opponent to 1, and then finish them off with a Skullcrack, which would have also been great at preventing the life gain from the Shambling Vent. Alright, on to sideboarding against the black-white tokens. So Searing Blood could be okay, as it can kill a token, deal 3. Don't think there's anything else in our sideboard we really want. I don't really see anything we want to take out for the Searing Bloods is the issue. So we might just want to stay put. I could see that, since killing a token, while it's nice, is not the end of the world. And if our opponent doesn't present any targets for Searing Blood, and they have some hand disruption spells, then Searing Blood is weaker than just a 3 damage burn spell. This hand seems okay. We're missing a creature to deal early damage, but I don't think we can afford to mulligan. And is this a turn 1 Inquisition? It is. So it's probably going to go after the Boros Charm. Instead takes a Skullcrack, so our opponent must have some life gain. I guess some timely reinforcements would make sense. So in that case, do we want to just Lava Spike our opponent right away, or do we try and pace ourselves and keep some burn spells in hand? But that's of course worse against discard spells from the opponent. So if we take a bit of extra damage with our fetch lands and shock lands, timely reinforcements could be less of a concern. So I don't hate just taking the 2 extra damage here with the Sacred Foundry and put our opponent to 16 and keep the Lightning Bolt since it's a bit more versatile. And another Inquisition, might take the Eidolon this time. Yep. So that's not the start you want to see as a burn deck. Our opponent being able to trade 2 Inquisitions for 2 of our best cards in hand and not take any damage. I think I'm fine taking 2 here in case of a timely reinforcements on the other side. This way our opponent doesn't get to gain any life. And I want to keep the fetch land in case we top deck Searing Blaze. Opponent fetches down to 15. And a Bitter Blossom, that's exactly what we want to see here as the burn deck. But of course they could still have Timely Reinforcements to gain some life back, or the Shambling Vent. So do we Boros Charm our opponent here, or do we hang on to it? Keeping Boros Charm could be bad in the face of more discard spells if we are unable to empty our hand in response. So I think it's probably worth it to deal 4 to your opponent, but again, there's a concern of Timely Reinforcements. And another Inspiring Vantage, so yeah, this is not where we want to be as a burn deck, drawing more lands. So I'll play the Arid Mesa, say go. We can potentially take 3 damage from this fetch land, which is still not enough to go below 11 life. And there's also the Bitter Blossom now. And yep, there's Timely Reinforcements. We could fetch Shock, go to 12, bolt ourselves down to 9. That's probably better than making the opponent gain 6 life, honestly. But it's definitely not pretty. And now we're out of answers for the Shambling Vent. Let's play the Vantage, say go. If our opponent doesn't draw a 4th land and doesn't have any more life gain, we might be okay. Alright, no land for Shambling Vent. Take 1 down to 8, so unlikely to have another Timely Reinforcements, otherwise they would have cast it beforehand. And end of turn we'll fire off the Boros Charm. And if we top deck another Boros Charm, we might be able to win on our opponent's upkeep when they take 1 from Bitter Blossom. Instead of Searing Blaze, still pretty good here. Unfortunately, we don't have our fetch land anymore, so we can't catch the Shambling Vent with it. But we can kill a Fairy Rogue and put our opponent to 2. Then they'll go to 1 from the Bitter Blossom, and then back up to 3 with Shambling Vent, but they're still dead to most of our burn spells. So I think I'm fine firing off the Searing Blaze here. Maybe I should have kept one of our lands in hand in case of a second Searing Blaze. What is this? A Sorin Solemn Visitor. Yeah, that's definitely worse than our opponent activating Shambling Vent. But they only get in for 2. So we do still have a lot of outs here. Any 3 damage burn spell wins us the game. But if we don't manage to find one next turn, then we're probably dead. So time to top deck. Goblin Guide, that's not good enough here, sadly. I guess we might be able to get some more info from the opponent's deck. So very close here. And they reveal another Sorin Solemn Visitor. Yeah, Sorin's definitely a concern. So that might be an argument for maybe wanting the Searing Bloods, since if we can get rid of their creatures, then Sorin doesn't do much. Opponent goes to 4, and yeah, then we're pretty much dead here. They can activate Shambling Vents, plus Sorin, attack us for 5, and gain 5, and there's no way we're coming back from that. So it could be that if we had sequenced some things differently, we would have been able to deal exactly enough damage. But yeah, having to play around Timely Reinforcements is pretty tricky. And a Skullcrack comes a little bit too late here. Would have been an awesome top deck last turn. Alright, let's pack it in and see if we can win the 3rd game. So do we want to change anything? So the only real consideration here is Searing Blood, I think, but I'm still not sure what we would want to take out for it. I think I'll bring in Searing Blood instead of Lightning Helix, since us gaining life is not super relevant and is also kind of bad in the face of Timely Reinforcements. Would like to be on the play. And this hand's a lot better than our previous ones, since we get to lead with a 1-mana creature. Of course, our opponent will be packing Path to Exiles and Fatal Pushes. So we'll lead with our Goblin Guide here. Although, let's have a look. Did our opponent keep the card on top with their Scry on the bottom? Alright, so it's less likely that they were light on lands and kept the land on top. But I think either way we're probably playing Guide on 1. Just want to maximize our damage output. And then next turn we can go Swiftspear plus Lava Spike, which is a total of 5 damage. And Thoughtseize revealed, don't mind seeing that one. Alright, so we just need to dodge something like Collective Brutality or Timely Reinforcements, and then we should be okay. Opponent does go with turn 1 Thoughtseize, probably taking the Swiftspear here is my guess. Instead takes a Skullcrack, so that might imply turn 2 Collective Brutality or turn 3 Timely Reinforcements. Picked up an Eidolon of the Great Revel, so let's see here, we can go Swiftspear plus Lava Spike, deal 7, put our opponent to 9, or we can play an Eidolon here, which is also pretty tempting. So I think I'm leaning towards Eidolon here. The earlier we get Eidolon down, the better usually, and that kind of mitigates some of the life gain from Brutality at least, by dealing 2. Opponent does get a Marsh Flats from the guide, sadly. Let's just get a mountain for now, I think. Please no Brutality. Instead it's a Legion's Landing, alright, that's fine. And a tapped Goddess Shrine. Alright, so now we just have to think about Timely Reinforcements and those implications. So our opponent is getting the tokens no matter what. Is there a way we can prevent a life gain from happening? I don't think so. So we're just gonna have to fight through it. Alright, let's play Swiftspear. Take 2. I think we just attack with everyone here, see what happens. And there's a chance we Lightning Bolt our opponent. Opponent does block the guide. So right now they would be taking essentially 2 damage down to 10. And then a Timely Reinforcements puts them to 8 and then back up to 14. And if we Lightning Bolt ourselves, then we could get ourselves as low as a 9 life, which is still not enough where we can prevent a life gain from Timely Reinforcements. So I guess that means we just bolt our opponents, so we get the prowess on the Swiftspear. Alright, let's hope to dodge Timely one time. We know they have the Marsh Flats, so they do have the 3rd land to cast it for sure. Oh, instead it's a Spectral Procession, alright. Does not trigger Eidolon of the Great Revel, since it's a 6 mana card. But that's definitely what we wanted to see, since now we can just burn them out. So we tried our best to play around Timely this game. Not sure if there was a line that allowed us to play around it better, but it wasn't necessary in the end. And we'll move on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, and this hand is pretty good. Double guide is always nice to have in your opener, and only 2 lands is ideal. Turn 1 Flameblade Adepts are up against the Hollow One deck. Alright, so the Hollow One deck can be pretty explosive, and they can definitely kill us before we kill them, but I think we just played a guide here still. And we also don't have a way of killing the Adept, either way. And the Goblin guides are gonna go down in value pretty quickly, as our opponent has some pretty large creatures like Gurmag Anglers and Hollow Ones that they can block with. Let's see if they have a Faithless Looting or some other discard effect. Yep, there's a Looting. So that's gonna make the Adept into a 3-power creature here at the very least. So if they also have something like a Street Wraith they can cycle, plus a land, they could get back the Phoenix, thanks to the Flame Blade Adept being 4 power. They get a Mountain. And there's a Hollow One instead, so Goblin Guide already unable to get in for damage. And we'll take a 3 from the Flame Blade, and next turn our opponent can get back double Flamewake Phoenix. So it's not looking good for the burn deck here, sadly. We could play another Goblin Guide, keep it on defense, discourage an attack with the Hollow One. Is that better than suspending 2 Rift Bolts? I think we'll suspend 2 Rift Bolts here, since that gives us the chance of killing Hollow One next turn. So yeah, this is also a game that's going to be affected by play and draw quite a lot, since you can imagine if we had Goblin Guide on 1, get in for 2, get in for 2 again on turn 2, while now the Goblin Guide's already halted after just 1 attack. And there's a Goblin Lore, which is going to make Flameblade Adept pretty huge. At least our opponent doesn't have the mana to get back Phoenix, and they discarded double Gurmag Angler and Bloodcast. So if we were to take 8, we go to 8, and then our opponent's Bloodcast is going to have haste, which is relevant. So if we take 8 down to 8, next turn we have double Rift Bolt, double Lava Spike, so that's 12, 14, put our opponent to 3. I think I'm fine taking the damage here, but we might die next turn if our opponent can hit a land, get double Phoenix back and get a Bloodcast back as well. And they did have the land, interesting, but they decided not to get back a Phoenix because they had another Flameblade Adept. Alright, so what's the play here? We could take out Hollow One, prevent them from getting back the Phoenix, or we could just go face, or we could kill one Flameblade Adept. A lot of options. So if we go face and attack with the Goblin Guide, and let's say our opponent doesn't block with the Adept, then they take 8 down to 9, and we could technically kill them if we top deck a Lightning Bolt here. I think we're just going face here. I don't think we're winning this game if these Rift Bolts are pointed at the opponent's Hollow One, and we just have to try and get lucky, I guess. And we drew Mountain, so that's not a 3 damage Lightning Bolt or Lava Spike. Can we afford to attack with both guides, or do we have to keep one back to block the Hollow One? Let's say our opponent doesn't do anything besides getting back 2 Phoenix. We're already unable to attack with Goblin Guide since we would be taking lethal. So we have to keep both guides back. And then just double Lava Spike our opponent, but how are we winning if we're not attacking with the guides? I guess we have to hope our opponent makes a mistake. And I'll just attack with a single Goblin Guide. And our opponent does block. Alright, so now we're not necessarily taking a lethal next turn. So I'm fine casting double Lava Spike here. Say go. So now if they just get back double Phoenix, then we're just taking 7 down to 1 if we chum block Hollow One. And then there's a chance we can win on the way back. But now with the looting, pumping the Flameblade Adept, I think we're dead. Since the Adept is going to be 3 power, get back double Phoenix. And then even if we block the Hollow One, we're taking 9 damage. But by attacking with the Goblin Guide, we made our opponent chum block with the Flameblade Adept. So the only other option we had was potentially killing the Hollow One with double Rift Bolt. But I honestly don't see how we're winning that game. So triple Flamewake Phoenix comes back. And yeah, that's enough. Alright, so on to sideboarding against Hollow One. It's questionable whether or not we want Rest in Pieces in this matchup, since it does shut off a big part of the opponent's deck. But they can definitely just beat us without a graveyard if they just cast an early Hollow One. But it's probably still good enough in this matchup, I'm guessing. And then Path to Exile is probably good enough too. Do we want anything else? Don't think so. So 4 cards coming in. What do we take out? I could see cutting the Eidolons in this matchup since Hollow One and Gurmag Angler don't get affected by it. And we might be taking more damage from Eidolon than the opponent. I'll try without Eidolons. Would like to be on the play. And yeah, this hand has a lot of burn. No creatures sadly. But I don't think we can afford to mulligan. So we'll just grab a basic Mountain and Lava Spike. I guess we could have also considered bringing in Deflecting Palm, but I don't love it in the face of our opponent's discard with Collective Brutality. Alright, Path to Exile the draw. So let's just play Arid Mesa, say go. And turn to Goblin Lore, sure. Discards Gurmag Angler, Goblin Lore, Street Wraith. So not the best discards, but let's see if they have some free Hollow Ones. They do. 1. Do they have a second one? No, just a 1. Alright, so I think I'm happy pathing that one. And then bolting the opponent. I guess we could have afforded to wait to path the Hollow One in the opponent's upkeep so they wouldn't get the untapped land here. Yeah, maybe that was bad. And there's a Gurmag Angler. That's fine. We're just gonna try and outrace it. And a Bloodcast. Sure. So we'll just bolt our opponent here. And we're just 1 lightning bolt away from killing them. Drawing creatures now would be pretty bad. Searing Blaze almost good enough here. We'll say go. Burning Inquiry. Alright, opponent's playing with fire here. And we're left with a Lightning Helix, which is definitely an upgrade over Searing Blaze. Let's see if they found a Collective Brutality to stay alive. Gets in for 7, puts us to 12. And another Bloodcast. That's not gonna cut it. Alright, so I think we messed up this game by pathing the Hollow One end of turn instead of just doing it in the opponent's upkeep. And perhaps we should have kept one of our lands in hand in case of a Searing Blaze top deck, but did not end up costing us here. So do we want to reconsider Deflecting Palm? I guess our opponent's not super heavy on discard, so Deflecting Palm can potentially be better than something like a Searing Blaze. Could see that. Think we're happy with our path to Exile still. And I don't think Eidolon is great, especially now on the draw. It gets a lot worse. So I guess we'll try a single Deflecting Palm. We'll just try this. And this hand looks okay. We'll need some cooperation from our opponent with these Searing Blazes, but I don't think we can afford to mulligan this one. Turn 1 looting can only lead to a Hollow One if they also have a Street Wraith they can cycle, but I'm assuming our opponent might have boarded out some number of Street Wraiths against the burn deck. Alright, found a fetch land, which is good for next turn potentially. We're just gonna guide and get in for 2. Reveals another looting. And a Goblin lore discarding Hollow One and Bloodcasts, but they had another Hollow One. Alright, let's see here what we want to do about this. So we could attack Goblin Guide into Hollow One and then finish it off with a Searing Blaze. That's definitely reasonable. And if our opponent doesn't block with Hollow One, then we can play Arid Mesa and then maybe Searing Blaze a Phoenix or Boros Charm the opponent end of turn. But in case they do block, then I'll want to play the Mountain for the Searing Blaze. Opponent finds a Blood Crypt with Goblin Guide, and our opponent just takes it. So now I think we want to Arid Mesa, say go. And maybe next turn we can unload some number of Swiftspears. Untap the Blood Crypts. Opponent can get back Bloodcast. And the looting. Discarding another Bloodcast and a Burning Inquiry. And a Flameblade Adept. That's also a prime target for Searing Blaze. Phoenix cannot come back since the opponent's out of red mana. Hollow One gets in for 4. Nothing we can do about that one. And a Fatal Push on Goblin Guide. Alright, makes sense. So let's Searing Blaze the Adept to start with. And our draw might also change our decision. Found a Lightning Bolt. So we could go double Swiftspear plus Bolts, which is also pretty good. Might be better than Searing Blazing Bloodcast and getting in for 2 with Swiftspear. Yeah, I could see that. Could have also bolted Hollow One plus Searing Blaze Hollow One, but that's pretty defensive. Well, now we get in for 4, put the opponent to 4, and they're dead to Boros Charm if they don't gain life in some way. And it's unlikely they get to kill us here, since Bloodcast doesn't have haste yet, and there's only 1 Phoenix in the graveyard. Fatal Push a Swiftspear, that's fine. Opponent's got 1 card left, so it's got to be a pretty good one. And wow, Burning Inquiry makes us discard the Boros Charm. We still have lethal with Lava Spike and Searing Blaze, luckily. But that could have definitely messed us up. And our opponent's going to keep back Hollow One to block the Swiftspear, but that's not going to matter. Alright, and we drew a Bolt anyway. Alright, sweet, so managed to beat Hollow One onto the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, and this hand seems okay. Do need to draw second land at some point, but with triple 1-drop creatures we can definitely do some damage in the meantime. And we're on the draw, so we're more likely to draw land. Alright. Against the Celestial Colonnade deck. Don't love giving the opponent extra lands here, but just have to maximize our damage output. And the sooner we draw that second land, the better. since we definitely have the tools to burn our opponent out here. Goblin Guide reveals Wall of Omens. That's definitely a good one against us. Being able to soak up 2 damage from a guide every turn. Alright, let's play another guide here. Reveals Island, and what else? Serum Visions. So they got a 1 land from our guides already. And there's a Serum Visions. And we found a land, which is good. Good seed being Swiftspear plus Suspend Riftbolt. So let's lead with Swiftspear. And play a Foothills, attack with everyone. And negate on top, which your opponent probably kept there with the Serum Visions. Opponent takes 3, down to 13. And I think we want to get a Sacred Foundry here. Suspend Riftbolts. Since the opponent does play Field of Ruin, and I don't want him to be able to cut us off white mana that easily. And yep, there we see Field of Ruin. Riftbolt comes off of Suspend. Let's see if they negate this. They do. And Lava Spike the draw. So against control decks, often what's right to beat counter spells is to kind of sandbag or burn spells, so that they won't be able to easily counter them. But in this case, we're kind of heavy on burn spells and light on lands, so it might be okay to just fire off burn spells one after the other. So let's Lava Spike our opponents. See if they have more counter spells. They do. Second negate, 2 main deck negates is pretty interesting. Let's attack. Reveals Island. And Flooded Strands. Your opponent's getting a lot of lands from these guides. And this Wall of Omens has soaked up quite a bit of damage in the meantime. Alright, Suspend the Riftbolt, say go. And Supreme Verdict to clear the board. Alright, that's gonna put our opponent almost dead here. Riftbolt puts him to 6. Boros Charm to 2. Unless they have a Spell Snare. And we'll fire off the Boros Charm now that our opponent's tapped out. So our opponent's at 2. And now we're definitely happy playing the draw-go game and just accumulate a bunch of burn spells in hand to help us finish off the opponent. So playing the Swiftspear here doesn't really accomplish much, so I don't think it's even worth it to play it out. And if our opponent ever taps out, they're dead. Alright. It's gonna make it so we're able to cast both our burn spells. And Jace, a Mind Sculptor, that's a good one. Is he gonna Fate Seal us? Yep. So they're gonna probably put all lands on top at this point. So it's not super likely that our opponent has 2 counterspells here. More likely is that they have a Cryptic Command. So Jace bottomed with the Fate Seal ability. So I guess we're fine casting a burn spell here and then untapping. We might draw into another burn spell and then we might be able to beat double counterspell here. So we'll Helix the opponent. This is probably going to get countered. Opponent fetches to 1 with Flood Strand. So this looks like a Cryptic Command incoming, or maybe Snapcaster Negate. And yep, it's going to be Snapcaster Negate, and then they're dead to Boros Charm. In these situations against the control deck, you just want to make sure not to cast your burn spells one by one, since then you give them the opportunity to counter them one by one. But by doing things end of turn, untapping, and then casting more burn spells, you're able to kind of overload their mana where they can't counter everything. Alright, so on to sideboarding against blue-white control. The control deck might have some timely reinforcements, they're gonna bring in more counter spells as well. So Exquisite Firecraft is great, but I think that's about it. Don't really see anything else I would want. I'm probably just gonna take out 2 Searing Blazes. Searing Blaze can still catch something like a Vendilion Clique or a Snapcaster Mage, and there's nothing else in the sideboard I would want over it. Could make a case for Revelry, but it's not like the opponent has a ton of enchantments that we care about. Alright, this hand seems okay. An early Eidolon can definitely do some damage as well. And our opponent's mulliganing down to 4, wow. So this one should be winnable. Let's suspend Rift Bolts. And if we can just stay at 2 lands and keep drawing spells, this one should be easy. So we'll Rift Bolt the opponent down to 17. And we can probably even beat Timely Reinforcements with these circumstances. Although ideally we would want to keep up Skullcrack for Timely. Alright, they did have the Path to Exile, but they still took 2. And now a Timely Reinforcements at least doesn't give them any tokens. Just another tapped Colonnade. So I think we're fine playing out Eidolon here. Although I guess we could Lavamancer first as well, but then we risk running into a Supreme Verdict. I think we're fine just playing Eidolon, keeping up Skullcrack in case of Timely Reinforcements. Eidolon resolves, we'll say go. And then probably just Helix the opponent end of turn. Opponent says go. We'll fetch. Get a Sacred Foundry here in case of Field of Ruins. Opponent down to 12. Lightning Bolt's a great draw. So let's attack with our Eidolon. And they do have the Path to Exile, that's fine. Opponent down to 10. We've got 9 points of burn in hand. And now we're probably just going to play the Lavamancer, which can deal a ton of damage all by himself. And kind of forces an extra removal spell. Say go. Instead it's a Gideon of the Trials. Gideon's actually pretty annoying since the emblem kind of forces us to attack Gideon as well. So Gideon resolves. It's gonna plus on the Lavamancer. We will still be able to use the Lavamancer on the opponent's upkeep, so I think we might have the kill here. If we just Lightning Helix our opponents, plus Bolt them. Down to 4, and then Skullcrack plus Lavamancer activations, lethal. And I don't think there's anything the opponent can do. Blue-white usually doesn't have life gain at instant speed, and Boros Charm is going to make it even easier. But otherwise we would have just Skullcracked and then used Lavamancer in the opponent's upkeep after the Gideon effect wears off. And that does it. I want to thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for supporting the channel, and you can do so yourself as well over at patreon.com/LegenVD, where you get cool rewards for supporting the channel, as well as getting us closer to our goals, where with every goal reached we will release an additional weekly series. So if you want to see more content, Patreon is the place to go.